Ahoy! We got some very interesting hints for the expansion today. Not all of them were explicitly spelled out, you had to read between the lines a little bit, but it's definitely going to be very spicy. So in today's community Q&A, the devs announced a big dev update about the expansion coming next week. But they still gave us some answers at least, and we can get a lot from these few answers. I thought that the expansion may get announced with Gamescom, that didn't happen, so the next week may coincide with PAX West, which is from the 1st to the 4th of September, but on the other hand, that would be odd insofar that as far as I know, most trailers are usually on the first days of those events, so it may be that they're just announcing the expansion without showing a trailer at any gaming event. So it could be that they're primarily advertising through Twitch instead. The first thing the devs confirmed is that there will be a PTR, but the PTR will be shorter than usual and we'll get more details on that later. I guess they don't want people to burn through the content too much before the expansion releases and find all the secrets already. I just hope that leaves enough time to find the most important bugs. And on the topic of bugs and issues, one important issue that was brought up was the desync and lag that was introduced with patch 2.02. This is primarily in Outpost Rush and arenas. The devs are very aware of this and it is one of their top priorities and they're working on it as hard as they can. Desync is very complicated and they haven't exactly got to the root cause yet. They do have some specific fixes for desync on the Hatchet and Firestaff, which is coming with the expansion, but I think that is mostly unrelated to this desync, which is more on a larger scale across many different things. They emphasize again that they're working hard on it and they're hoping to give an update with positive news soon. I was planning to talk about this in more detail, actually that video was meant to come out today, but then they announced this. So we'll see if I still post that, but to just give you a very brief rundown, it does seem like a very complicated issue that is very hard to track down for a variety of reasons. For example, the issue is not always present for everyone, and for some people switching to medium or low bandwidth mode has decreased the desync. Somebody wanted to know if the faction store rewards will be reworked because most of them are useless at the moment. There will be changes to that in the expansion, more details will come in the dev update. Another question was what happens to crit multipliers with the removal of Resilient. As I predicted, players will now have baked-in inherent crit protection. But there's something I absolutely did not predict or expect, and that is that the crit protection will be based on equip load. So you will have more crit protection in heavy and less in medium and even less in light. This is incredibly interesting to me because on one hand it increases the viability of crit builds in PvP, but on the other hand it also increases the viability of heavy in PvP, especially in large-scale PvP where you're getting hit with a lot of damage. At the moment heavy is almost non-existent and maybe this may finally be the factor that makes heavy a little bit more appealing again. With the next question we got more of an answer than we could have asked for. What happens to combat trophies? Combat trophies will continue to exist. They're basically something to aim for the last bit of min-maxing. And I'm just gonna show you the direct quote here.
It is just for that last little bit of damage. You'll only need them in like the highest level mutator M3, in the highest level mutators coming up.
Okay. I actually had to laugh the first time I watched this. The reactions are just beautiful. So, well, the highest level mutator M3. What does that tell us? Well, first of all, it tells us that David decided to sneak a bit of an expansion teaser into this Q&A anyways. I'm not sure if this was planned, but what this tells us is that the mutation rework is finally coming. I was, again, predicting this. I was saying this is likely something they pushed back for the expansion because it would just make more sense in that context when we get a gear score, potentially a level increase anyways. It just falls together very well with a rework of the mutator system. So we're gonna have M1, M2 and M3 now, and M3 is going to be the hardest one, very likely. That is a lot more appealing, especially for returning players, and likely means that everyone will have to start from M1 again with the expansion. That is at least what I would guess. Keep in mind that this also coincides with the Ward and Bane removal. So you'll have your one gear set that you can take into every expansion, and then to get to the max level you just need to do 3 of them. Much better than the current system. It's gonna be even better, but we get to that in a couple of minutes. The next question was when the territory influence overhaul will be, because pushing is so boring, and I absolutely agree with that statement. I will say that I wish people would look at the roadmap first before asking questions, because it is on the Season 3 roadmap, so it's gonna be in Season 3, and they said they will talk about it in the dev update, surprise surprise, which is for Season 3. We got a similar answer to someone asking for a preview of the mounts. They said they're coming, they're awesome, and they're in the dev update. Somebody wanted to know when we'll be able to get the new music sheets that were introduced with the Medley Fair event in-game. David said they are actually already in the game, but they're bugged and in the wrong loot bucket, but they will be fixed in Season 3. Another question was how acquiring best in slot gear will work in Season 3. Currently it's expensive, there's unclear progression, and there's a lot of RNG involved. They have a lot of news coming for that specifically. There will be a special Balance of Power episode for this topic this week, not next week, before the expansion. So we'll have something to learn about that very, very soon. It's getting a lot better, and we're going to get a lot more control over our gear. As a whole, this will be a huge focus for the expansion. They had a previous dev conversation about that where they also kind of touched upon that topic and how they wanted to make things more accessible. Wanted to make it more possible for you to craft very good gear, especially if it's for yourself and not so much for others, just stuff that is bind on pickup. So I think that's likely the direction that we're taking, that you maybe just have guaranteed high gear score. So the speculation at the moment for the most part is that the new gear score max will likely be 700. And if that is the case, let's just assume for this idea here that this is the case, then maybe crafting will now not be a range once you reach that, but will be guaranteed 700 gear score and you're just rolling for the perks. Or you can lock 3 perks and then you're just rolling for actually getting 700 gear score and have like a range from 695 to 700, and then you basically just roll for getting 700 so that you actually get the piece with all 3 perks. If you haven't seen the video yet where they talk about rewards and progression and what their plans for that are, I will link that down in the description so you can watch that as a preparation for what we hear later this week. Other than them not wanting to reveal stuff from the dev talk next week yet, another reason why we're getting less answers than usual is because based on the feedback they received, they wanted to dial down on the whole this is something we would like to do but we don't have anything to share right now answers, so we get less questions answered now. I personally didn't think those answers were a bad thing because at least they told us what the devs are planning to do in the further away future, what they're looking towards eventually. But I can understand that it builds some weird anticipation for something that may be years away, so I can see why other people may not like it as much. But they closed the show out with another very important piece of information with a little clip from the Balance of Power episode, which is about Umbral Shards. There will be no more Umbral Shard leveling. Since the experience was frustrating, items are just gonna drop at the higher item levels appropriate to the content that you're doing. You don't need to invest extra resources into leveling them up or anything. First of all, great news. I don't think anyone particularly liked the Umbral grind. But also, I'm very curious how far they will push this. Does this mean that every drop will just be 700 gear score and there will be no trash loot, no 2-perker equivalents anymore? I personally wouldn't hate that. I would imagine that in return they might cut down on the amount of loot you receive, but I don't think most people would hate that either, considering at M10s you currently just get a truckload of stuff that you don't really run that is just useless purples that you're going to scrap immediately. Overall, definitely some very exciting news for the expansion, both when it comes to gearing, mutations, the gear weight changes with the crit multiplier and all that stuff. I think it's sounding very good so far. Once we know more, I will of course let you know. Consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you want to get notified. If you'd like to support me further and get some early trading tips, then you can do so on Patreon. Thanks to my patrons who already do exactly that. Thank you for watching. Sloth out.